Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard, and welcome back to the Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, we'll talk through the market indexes, leading stocks, my previous watch list, and how it performed. We'll talk about sentiment a little bit here, breadth, and also cover the IBD Big Picture article, and finally the GMI Signal from richardlmoglen.com. At the end of the video, I'll put all of this together and give you my take on the general market conditions. So if you do enjoy my analysis, please go ahead and take the time. It just takes 1 second to go ahead and leave a like down below. And subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So first, taking a look at the NASDAQ composite chart, you can see that we're now below a 21 EMA here, which is still rising, but a little bit flatlining here. And we are still above a rising 50 SMA. So what I'm watching for is if we hold above this swing low here, as well as the 15,000 level. And if we do break that, I'm watching for support right near the top of this prior structure and the 50 SMA on this index. And I think the weakness, especially late in the day Friday, was kind of brought upon by the mega caps really being a huge weight within this index and the S&P 500. If you take a look at Apple, Amazon, those are experiencing a ton of weakness at this point, and we'll get into that later on in the video. But overall, still above a rising 50 SMA, so the uptrend is still intact, but a little bit of caution signs here below the 21 EMA, which has been support during prior uptrends. Moving on to the S&P 500, let's take a look at that chart here. This is now below a rising 50 SMA, so that's a little bit of a caution sign once again, and we're below this swing low, so this index is a little bit weaker than the NASDAQ composite, and I'm watching for some type of response here at this level because the 50 SMA during this uptrend has been a pretty strong level of support. You can see a bunch of undercuts and reclaims of this moving average during this move really from late October in 2020. So this is a pretty critical level, and if the S&P 500 starts to live below the 50 SMA, that would be a little bit of a character change and could suggest that a more serious correction is in order, which could be brought upon by monetary policy, different news events. We don't really know. All we can do is follow the action of the market leadership and general market indexes. But on the positive side, if we see some type of undercut and reclaim of this moving average, maybe a gap down and a strong close with a lot of leadership stocks acting really well, that would be a huge positive and could mark the restart of a nice uptrend on the S&P 500 towards all-time highs. And I do want to see us get it back above the 4,500 level and these prior pivots right here, but still in a kind of critical zone here. And I think next week will provide a lot of clarity. So moving on to IWO, taking a look more at small caps. This is why the action under the surface, especially late last week on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, was basically a lot better than what the indexes, the S&P 500, which are really kind of skewed towards those mega cap names. These smaller cap names were acting a lot better. So the IWO, strong action on Wednesday and support off the 50 SMA on Thursday and Friday, holding above the 300 level. So for this, I want to see us stay above this swing low on market weakness and start to trend back towards the 311.84 pivot. Looking at the Russell 2000, the IWM, this is also acting better than the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500, and we're holding above that 50 SMA and 200 SMA here and the 220 level. So I want to see us stay above this swing low as well as this key moving average, the 200 SMA, and start to trend above this pivot and make its way back towards all-time highs. But these two charts clearly show the divergence between the smaller cap names and the larger cap names, because if you just go back and forth between IWM and the S&P 500, let's go back to that chart for just a second. You can see that the IWM is much stronger, holding above those key moving averages. So also taking a look at AAPL, this is really what's causing this divergence. The mega caps are experiencing some weakness as we try to break down through the structure. So once again, I do want to see us find support at this prior level here, the bottom of this kind of VCP short-term shelf here. And then if we get a rally back through this, I think that could restart an uptrend in the general market indexes. Also taking a look at AMZN, Amazon. This is also experiencing a little bit of weakness, a little bit stronger than Apple for sure, forming a little bit of a cup-shaped base after a failed breakout right here. So there's some resistance at the top of the prior base, and it's also formed the top of the handle of the stage 1 cup. So we'll see how this goes, whether we hold above this level as well as the rising 21 EMA or kind of break down and just form a longer term consolidation. Also taking a look at the FFTY, this is also acting much stronger than the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500, which gives me a little bit of hope that this uptrend is not done. And overall, we'll get into the leaders later on in this video, and they're acting also pretty darn strong considering the weakness in the general market. So the FFTY trending above a rising 21 EMA looks pretty strong. Do have a little bit of a downside reversal on Friday, so I do want to see us hold above this pivot and at the very least above this low right here and the 21 EMA. So that's a run through of the general market indexes. And now let's move on to TC2000 and take a look at breadth very quickly. And this is the percentage of stocks above their 40-day moving averages. So this gives you a sense of how stocks are trending. And it's very useful on the downside, especially when we get into general corrections. When this gets below 10.5, it's starting to look like we might be forming a bottom. But on the flip side, during an uptrend, during a strong uptrend, you can see that breadth overall has been decreasing, and we have seen a decrease the past 2 weeks or so. So on this, I want to see us stay above this level. And if we can rally above this, that would mean that breadth is increasing, and the likelihood of a resumption of the uptrend on the general market indexes, the S&P 500, could be in order. So that's just a quick run through of the T2108. Definitely something to consider if you're a user of TC2000. And I also want to take a look at the Webby RSI, which if we go to the NASDAQ composite, you can see it had a little bit of a spike 2 weeks ago or so before the NASDAQ started this little bit of a pullback here. So it got a little bit short-term extended compared to where it had been during this rally. And now we have seen some distribution and we're back below the 21 EMA, which is why this is negative. So that's a quick run through a breadth and the Webby RSI. And now let's move on to the potential market leadership. So here we have my leadership list sorted by that weekly change. You can see we do have a bunch making new highs in terms of price as well as relative strength, but we do have a fair amount still below their 21 and 50 SMAs given the pullbacks early last week. So starting things off with ASAN, this has been pretty much going vertical here, getting definitely short-term extended, but still super strong above its 10-day simple. So if you're holding this, it might be time to take some profits, sell the strength a little bit, and definitely if you see us break below this level and the 10-day, it might be time to sell at least part of your position so you can sit with a pullback to 21 EMA or even a rising 50 SMA. So that is ASAN. Moving on, we've got DOCN, also super strong above the 10-day. Definitely a bunch of weakness on this Friday right here on very large volume, the largest in the past 250 days. So might be time to sell some if you own it at this point and you bought it near the 50 SMA back when I think it was on my focus list at this point. But a super strong trend, nice breakout here, a little bit of wedgie action here, but nevertheless a super strong move. And if it does break expectations, break that 10-day and 21 EMA, we'll see if it needs to start another base or if it can recover and restart this move upwards. UPST also super strong, bouncing off the 10-day here on this day, and looks pretty good, but definitely also a little bit short-term extended. A little bit of a breakout, nice 3-bar break to the upside and 2-2 reversal on this Thursday. That would have been the latest point to get in here. But once again, this move is super strong, but definitely a little bit too late for a nice low risk, high reward potential entry at this point. GDRX, I just added to this list, a little bit of a changing character within its institutional due diligence phase, breaking above this resistance level. And you can see it acted really nicely on Thursday and Friday, really showing RS versus the market indexes. And you can see based off its RS line that this has been outperforming since this huge move up on very high volume. Fiverr as well has a little bit of a changing character starting on this day right here. RS line is in a nice uptrend, and this acted really nicely on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You can see good volume coming in on this move up, and after breaking through this high volume close here within this area, it then retested it, had a nice bounce and response to that level, and this is where it kind of changed character, and now it's back above the 50 SMA, although the 50 SMA is still declining. I would like to see this kind of curl under price, and for this to tighten up above all the moving averages and present a nice launching pad for a further price increase as it tries to build out this base and fill this gap right here. So that is Fiverr. Moving on, we've got GLBE also acting pretty well. Pulled back to the top of this prior kind of high tight flag setup here. A nice response on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, finishing the week pretty much at the highs. Great RS. Look at that RS line jump here. And this looks pretty good, but we'll have to see if this consolidates more, right near the top of this resistance level around 78 or so, where it has pulled back twice before. So that is GLBE. Moving on, we've got PLTR also acting super strong, as you can see from the relative strength line. And you can see it broke out of a cup within a longer term base, which is a pretty nice structure here. And this also could be called an inverse head and shoulders, this being one of the shoulders, this being the head, and this being the other shoulders. So this looks pretty good. And I'll be watching to see if this tightens up here and basically forms a nice viable pullback, maybe against the 10-day simple moving average. Next up, we've got S, which also had a really nice response after a pullback last week. You can see a nice tight inside day on declining volume, then explosion upwards and inside day and up, nice fall through on Thursday, and then a bounce off the 10-day to end out the week on Friday above all the key moving averages. SBT grinding above the 10-day simple, nice response off the 21 EMA here. And this is seldom talked about, but this has been one of the strongest stocks in the market, as acting really well. Textbook action under accumulation, most likely, but definitely a little bit short-term extended at this point. And really, it has to base and form a tight shelf, constructive price structure before I'd consider an entry at this point. Dash, nice action as well. It really kind of changed character last week when the overall market was pulling back, as you can see from this gray line here, and the relative strength line just started increasing and had a nice push, pulled back a little bit, didn't even fall back to the 10-day, and then a gap up on nice volume, and then nice fall through on this Friday, although not the greatest close, but considering the action in the general market, this was acting pretty darn well. Crocs also acting really nicely starting on this Tuesday, nice fall through on Wednesday and Thursday, downside reversal on Friday on higher volume, so maybe a little bit of short-term weakness is expected, a fall back to the 10-21 EMA, but overall this trend has been super strong really since the March correction. Affirm, nice action here, double inside days, then a nice breakout on this Thursday, and then pretty much a consolidation day to end out the week on Friday on lower volume. So we'll have to see if this is the start of a move and a breakout through this high volume close is imminent, or if we do need a few more weeks to consolidate, tighten up, and kind of shake out those weaker holders. Team acting well, trending above the 10-day simple. This has been really strong since this high volume close. And if you draw a line right at this level, you can see how it pulled back right to that point, at this point, and at this point, and has been really an awesome stock since this breakout here, this 3-bar break to the upside. Bill also acting pretty well, holding this high volume close reasonably well, and we'll have to see if it manages to break out to all-time highs. D-Dog also holding pretty much near its high volume close during these points, and at this point, this nice upside reversal off the 21 EMA undercutting rally. This could have been an entry point here, and so far, nice action here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and a little bit of a downside reversal on higher volume on the Friday. Dexcom trending above the 21 EMA after a nice breakout on high volume, looks pretty good. SC holding that 21 EMA, looks pretty strong. OLO not acting super great. This is definitely an expectation breaker, and this is why you don't really want to buy breakouts through pivots when it's kind of straight off the bottom like this. And really, if you're trying to buy this, you want to buy right as it tries to break out from tightness or as it breaks a DTL like this. Moving on, we've got BNTX, which tried to move up last week, holding these base lows and could be setting up a pivot here next week through this high, through 375. Looks pretty good, although you do have high volume to the downside. This is a pretty good closing range to end out the week, although it is below this anchor VWAP from the basically highest point within this base after a really nice run up earlier this year. DLO pretty much going sideways, kind of holding that 21 EMA as well as this low right here. The 60 level looks pretty decent. SQ also really nice support after a nice bounce off the 200-day simple moving average, but we'll have to see if it can manage to get back above the 21 EMA and 50-day simple. Zscaler holding the 21 EMA really nicely, but these two bars show me there's not a lot of demand coming in. High volume downside reversal and actually a bearish outside day, not super great, but so far it is holding up above the 266, 267 level, so that is a good sign. Domo pulling back pretty sharply, back above the 10-day simple on pretty high volume, but it looks like this might not be done with its basing at this moment. Net also acting really nicely, holding that 21 EMA, nice upside reversal, undercut and reclaim of the 21 day exponential moving average on this day right here, the Monday the 13th, and then a little bit of a downside reversal on this Friday. And keep in mind, as we know, this was quadruple witching on this Friday, which is why volume is high on many of these stocks. Tesla, nice action after this upside reversal off the 21 EMA on this Monday, and finishing the week pretty much at the highs just under this prior pivot. Nice action as well, holding the 21 EMA, looks pretty good above all the key moving averages. CrowdStrike holding above the 50, nice reaction after this pullback. ENPH, I'll probably take this off the list. Not able to reclaim any of the key moving averages, but it is barely back above this anchored VWAP from this anchor, and we'll have to see how this acts next week. CMG holding above the 21 EMA, a little bit of a downside reversal on this Friday. However, LSPD, another stock that's been trending really nicely above the 10-day moving average, looks pretty strong. DocuSign, decent reaction, bullish outside day on this Wednesday, and some follow through on Thursday and Friday, but still below the key moving averages at this point. Shop also below the key moving averages, but holding this level reasonably well, where it has found support in the past back in this area. Roku still just in a downtrend below the key moving averages. Snapchat just going sideways, still frustrating a lot of people, but really nice action on Wednesday, inside day, then nice action again on this Friday, but still below this anchored VWAP from the earnings gap up. AMD still going sideways, forming a little bit of some pivots near 107, but holding above 100 at this point, and the 50 SMA. And this level, the 50 SMA, as well as this swing low, are pretty critical for next week. NVIDIA holding up a little bit better than AMD, but I do want to see it hold above this swing low and the 218 level, and we'll see if it holds the 21 EMA as well next week. GNRC, a little bit of a pullback on this Monday, but then going sideways, forming a little bit of a handle here above the 50-day simple. Moderna, nice push up and upside reversal here on this Friday, setting up for next week. And I like how it bounced off the 21 EMA and this anchor VWAP from the highs. LC definitely setting up for next week. We'll have to see if it holds this level and is pretty tight on an intraday chart. You could use a buy stop here through 29. That could be a potential entry here and manage risk versus these lows. App going sideways, tying up a little bit on Thursday and Friday above the 21 EMA. This will be on watch for next week. Figs also acted well on Wednesday and Thursday, but a little bit of an expectation breaker on this Friday. But we'll have to see how it acts next week. I would like to see this tighten up before setting up a setup, basically so I can manage risk versus a swing low. Roblox also some upside reversals here on Wednesday and Friday, but overall below all the key moving averages. And lastly, we've got Docs, which is holding up reasonably well. Not the greatest action on this Friday, but we'll have to see if it manages to stay above 91.85, which is pretty much the lows of these recent days. So in general, that's a run through of the leadership stocks, definitely holding up much better than the general market indexes. And I think that's because of Apple, Amazon also going through a little bit of a pullback here. And these are just dragging down the S&P 500 as well as the NASDAQ 100 just because they have such a large weight on those indexes. So promising action under the surface from the leadership stocks, and we'll have to see if that follows through next week or if these kind of roll over and break expectations and those key moving averages. Moving on, let's take a look at my focus list from this past week and sort by that weekly change. Some of these did get hits, especially some of the ones down here, Cook and Curve, very recent IPOs, but we did have some good performers, PLTR and AFRM. So let's go through these charts. PLTR we talked about already, Affirm as well. ZI grinding higher, back above the green line here. Did have a downside reversal on this Friday, but we'll have to see if this sets up another opportunity. But I like how it's trending above all the key moving averages at this point and is right near all-time highs. DLO as well, we talked about. SQ, nice action off the 200 SMA. Lulu going sideways after this earnings gap up and holding nicely above the high volume close. Decent upside reversal and fall through on Thursday, and we'll have to see how this acts going forward. Snap we discussed. Den just going sideways. Good reaction here, expectation breaker on this Wednesday, and going sideways within the space, forming a little bit of a structure right below this level. So this will be on watch for next week, and this level is right around 73. NTLA, nice upside reversal on Friday to end out the week, and we'll have to see if this falls through and breaks through these pivots and the key moving averages. NVIDIA, we talked about edit as well. I believe some news is expected soon about some trials, but acting reasonably well right near the top of this basing structure within this overall pretty large base. Beam, similar to NTLA, nice upside reversal on this Friday, and we'll have to see if this falls through the 21 EMA. Bumble not acting great. I believe it was still experiencing a secondary until the 15th here, and we'll have to see if this tightens up and starts to move back towards the top of this base and the anchored VWAP, which has been resistance up to this point. Figs we discussed already, Roblox as well. Cook basically broke expectations here, didn't hold the low of this base. And finally, we've got Curve, which also broke expectations, not following through with this very strong gap up on volume. So this looks like it definitely needs a lot more time. So all in all, some decent action from PLTR, Affirm as well. These are standouts within the market, and we'll have to see how the rest of these stocks act next week. And now moving on to sentiment, we've got my Twitter surveys here. We saw an increase in bullishness from 26.2% to now 41.1%. This is still on the lower end of things. Looking at the NAAIM exposure index, this is still relatively high at around 87. Looking at the put-call ratio, this is going the right way, increasing a little bit. And we'll see if we get a quick spike here if we do see some type of short-term bottom in the S&P 500. And lastly, in terms of sentiment, we've got the Bulls versus Bears poll. And you can see this is actually declining, which is a good sign. There's fear coming into the market. So overall, in terms of sentiment, things are a little bit bearish. I would like to see the NAAIM exposure index be a little bit lower. So with that said, let's move on to the IBD Big Picture article. The headline is S&P 500 closes below critical support as Apple sells off below key benchmark. Reading through, they discuss the poor action in the general indexes on Friday, how the Dow Jones and S&P 500 lost 0.5 and 0.9% respectively, and also how volume was higher on the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange due to it being quadruple witching, which led to a distribution day being added for the NASDAQ and S&P 500. They also discuss how they're shifting their outlook to an uptrend under pressure and discuss the failed breakout on CPRT. And you've got some stocks to watch, AMD and Chipotle, as they mentioned right here. So overall, as I mentioned, their current outlook is an uptrend under pressure. We now have 5 distribution days on the S&P 500 and 4 on the NASDAQ, and you have leaders up on volume and some leaders down on volume as well. And finally, we've got the Wishbone blog, GMI Signal, which is still green since May 26th. And Dr. Wish mentions how the FFTY retook its green line on this Friday. And in general, this index, small caps in general and growth stocks outside of the large mega caps are faring better than the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500. And overall, the GMI score on this Thursday was a 5 out of 6. So overall, taking everything into account, my current view is still an uptrend under pressure. We saw some promising action under the surface on Thursday and Friday, as we kind of saw some decoupling with the smaller cap growth names versus the mega caps, Apple, Amazon, which are under a little bit of pressure. And I think next week will provide a lot of clarity in terms of what direction this market will take. So as always, manage risk effectively, position size accordingly, and only put on more exposure if you're making progress in the market. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.